going to show you now how we create the T shape of the t-shirt style top that we're doing now. So when you're creating the piece of fabric that you're using to make this really open top, like to wear over a tank or a dress, you are going to begin at the top along the long edge of this T shape, like a capital T. You're going to work back and forth to make the width of the sleeve that you like. And then we are going to be sort of binding off. That's what it would be called if this was a knitted piece. But we're going to be sort of inching our fabric over so that we create the bottom leg of this T, and we get this nice crisp line here. We do also want to make sure that that happens in the same place on the same row for the right sleeve and the left sleeve. So we want to make sure that this happens on the same row. We don't want to end early, sort of turn around before you get to the end on one row and then do the same thing on the next row, because that actually makes our sleeves two different widths. The sleeve that the first row that you did that on, that sleeve would be narrower and the sleeve on the other side would be wider. It's not going to be a horrible thing if you do that because the rows themselves are fairly narrow, but to me it was a big enough deal that I wanted to make sure that I had a different option to make sure that our sleeves were the same width as each other. So to create that, what we're going to do, and I will put a link in the comments to the pattern, so you've got the full pattern written out. When you get to that point where you have created sleeve fabric, the width that you are supposed to, or the width that you prefer, you are going to be ready to begin the next row. And the pattern is going to tell you to work one slipped stitch into each of the first 8 stitches. And that slipped stitch isn't going to add any height. It's just going to allow us to take our working yarn and kind of inch it across to get to where we're ready to start the next part of our fabric. So to work a slipped stitch, if you haven't done that before, we do not need to do any kind of a turning chain because we're not adding any fabric, so we don't need any of the height of a turning chain. We are simply going to insert our hook under the 2 strands of the first stitch of that row. We're going to wrap our yarn around our hook, and we're going to pull the yarn we wrapped around our hook through every loop on our hook. So we're going under the 2 strands of fabric from the stitch where we inserted it, and under the loop that was on our hook. So we're back to 1 loop on our hook. And we're simply going to do that in the first 8 stitches across. So we've done the first one, here's the second one, here's the third one, and it does feel a little tricky if you've not done a slipped stitch before, because it is so tempting to wrap your yarn around that second time like you're going to do a single crochet or a double crochet. But you don't want to do that. You want to go in and then pull the yarn through every loop on your hook so that we're not adding any fabric. So once you've worked across the number of stitches that the pattern's telling you to, this pattern is telling us to go across 8 stitches, then it is going to be time to begin our next row of double crochets. And our yarn is connected to our stitch from the row below right here. We're just going to begin our turning chain and go right from this point. So I'm going to go ahead and chain my 3, and we're going to begin working our double crochets exactly like normal right here. So we're going to just put our double crochet into that next stitch. And that creates that smooth transition to create that T shape of the garment that you're doing. So this is what you do at the beginning of that row where you are taking off the little bit of sleeve stitches. When you're getting to the end of this row, so you're going to double crochet all the way across, and the pattern is going to tell you to double crochet 1 stitch in each stitch until you are 8 stitches from the end, and then you are going to stop your row there, and you're going to be working back and forth on that smaller number of stitches to create the body of the garment that you're doing. We don't have to do this where we're slip stitching across. On the other end, we can just stop short, and that gives us the same number of rows for the sleeve stitches. So we have the same number of rows on the sleeve stitch that we have on both sides, versus if we stop short on this side and stop short on the other side, one of our sleeves would be 1 row wider than the other one. And that bugged my brain, so I wanted a different way to do it.